What's the shadiest thing your family has ever done to you? I want to start this story off by saying, family reunions are effing unbearable. I know you're probably thinking, yeah, Zoe, no effing shut. Except, I can almost guarantee mine are worse than yours. You see, I'm the baby of the family with 3 older siblings. Except in my household, being the youngest has never been cute or endearing. Quite the opposite, actually. It's their excuse to treat me like I'm still in elementary school. It doesn't matter that I'm 32 with a thriving career and independence, because I'm unmarried without kids. So in their eyes, I may as well just be a dumb and useless 5-year-old. But despising my family home is nothing new. Ever since I got my first period, my mom's been sending her friends' sons from the local high school to court me. And when I turned 15, she started trying to marry me off to full-grown men. Looking back, she probably expected me to just be a docile teenage girl who would be down for anything, or anyone. But I always knew what was right or wrong, and I decided a long time ago that I would always stand my ground. So now, every December, when I return here for the sake of family, I'm reminded of the horrible life my mother desperately wanted me to live. But this one Christmas was even worse than usual. I arrived after everyone else had settled in. My eldest brother, Jake, was already there with his wife and their 3 kids, loudly arranging everything as if they owned the place. Then there was Olivia, my sister, with her husband and their toddler. Designer clothing, expensive jewelry, very picture perfect. As usual, I entered quietly, hoping to avoid the inevitable drama. When my mother spotted me, her face transformed into that practiced smile that always made me feel like an unwelcome obligation rather than a daughter. "Zoe, honey," she said, giving me one of those stiff hugs that feels more like a social requirement than affection. "So glad you made it. Is anyone joining you?" I shook my head. She pinched the bridge of her nose and sighed. Before we could continue, my father called from the dining room, his voice carrying that authoritative tone he uses when reminding everyone who's supposedly in charge. "Food's almost ready. Jake, Olivia, get the little ones settled, would you?" I stood awkwardly for a moment, unsure what to do with myself. I wanted to speak up, but it was the holidays. I wasn't ready to cause a scene yet. "Zoe, you should probably take a seat at the kids' table. In fact, we've already saved you a special spot there with the little ones." I literally froze in place. Was she serious? I glanced over at the main dining table. There at the head sat my father, looking smugly content, surrounded by my married and therefore superior siblings. No room had been made for me. I felt that familiar ache, the one that surfaces whenever they make it clear I don't measure up in their eyes. This wasn't just some passing comment or sideways glance. This was deliberate exclusion. I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Sure, Mom. Thanks," I managed, keeping my voice steady. She smiled back, but there was something in her expression that revealed she either didn't notice or didn't care about my feelings. This was all about maintaining appearances, ensuring their holiday looked perfect on the surface. Without another word, I walked over to the kids' table, my heart beating faster with every step. I hadn't expected special treatment, but for just a moment, I'd foolishly hoped they might treat me like the adult I am. That's when everything crystallized. This wasn't just about table assignments. This wasn't about holiday traditions or family togetherness. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. I stood up quietly, the weight of years of this treatment pressing down on me. I didn't need to shout or create a scene. I simply grabbed my coat, slung my purse over my shoulder, and walked directly toward the front door. "Zoe, where are you going?" my mom asked, her tone more irritated than concerned. I didn't turn around. "I'm leaving," I said coldly. "Enjoy your dinner." The door closed firmly behind me. The winter air hit my face like a slap, but in a good way. I drove around aimlessly for what seemed like hours, and eventually pulled into a 24-hour diner where I slid into a booth by myself. I ordered a hot chocolate, my hands still trembling slightly from adrenaline. Suddenly, the table started shaking. I realized it was because of how hard my phone was erupting with notifications, messages, missed calls, the whole 9 yards. I glanced at the screen. For once, I was in control, and I wasn't going to let it go to waste. They had absolutely no idea what was coming next. Everyone was reaching out. Jake, Olivia, even my dad, all calling and texting frantically. But the one that caught my attention was from my mother. "Where are you? We need to talk." "This isn't funny, Zoe." I felt a sardonic smile form on my lips, the kind that had been building all evening. I wasn't about to respond, though. Not yet. I set my phone face down and sipped my drink, watching the steam curl upward. What would my next move be? That was the question. And believe me, they weren't going to like the answer. I sat in that diner for what felt like forever, my phone buzzing incessantly. The messages grew increasingly desperate, each trying to manipulate me back into their game. Jake messaged first. "Zoe, this isn't cute. Where the hell are you?" Followed by Olivia. "Mom is freaking out. Please just come back." Then my father. "Stop acting childish. Get back here now." I didn't respond to any of them. I didn't owe them explanations. They'd made their choice when they treated me like some second-tier family member at their precious holiday dinner. All I wanted was basic respect as an adult, but instead, they'd decided I belonged with the kindergartners. After about an hour, I finally picked up my phone again to scan through the messages. The tone was shifting, like they were starting to realize I wasn't going to just cave in this time. Then, my mother's text appeared, making my stomach clench. "Zoe, I don't understand why you're making such a scene. Your siblings are worried, and you're ruining Christmas for everyone. Stop making everything about you. You're being selfish." I stared at those words, feeling another wave of anger rise. Selfish? They were the selfish ones. The entire evening had been about their image, their expectations. I had been nothing but a prop in their perfect family fantasy, yet somehow I was the problem. I honestly didn't know whether to laugh or scream. Instead, I just hit the block button on her number. I wasn't going to let her guilt me into submission. Not this time. I took a deep breath, centering myself. This wasn't just an impulsive reaction. I had a plan forming. Every single one of them had wronged me. And tonight, I was going to make damn sure they understood exactly how badly they'd screwed up. Later that evening, after finishing my meal and feeling the adrenaline subside slightly, I decided it was time. I opened our family group chat, where they typically complained about everything under the sun. There were already dozens of messages about me. This is ridiculous. She's acting like a toddler. What's the big deal? We didn't mean anything by it. She's just being dramatic as usual. I scrolled through them, my fingers itching to respond. I could have just ignored it all, but that would have been too easy. No, I needed them to feel it. I needed them to understand that their treatment had consequences. I began typing, slowly at first, then picking up speed. This wasn't just about tonight. This was about years of the same treatment. None of you get it, do you? This isn't just about where I sit at dinner. It's about how you've treated me my entire life. Like I'm somehow less worthy. Like I'm invisible unless you need something from me. I'm the only one who doesn't get praised for following your approved life script. Marriage, kids, suburbia. I've built my own life on my own terms, and I'm doing just fine. Maybe it's time you all recognize that. I paused before hitting send, feeling the weight of my words. For the first time in forever, I felt in control of the situation. I wasn't begging for their approval anymore. I wasn't going to be their perpetual disappointment. I pressed send. Almost instantly, responses flooded in. My phone pinged repeatedly, each message more frantic than the last. My father first. Zoe, this is absurd. You're being melodramatic. Get over yourself. Olivia quickly followed. You can't just storm out like that and not expect people to worry. What were you thinking? Jake chimed in. We didn't do anything wrong, Zoe. You need to calm down and come back before this ruins the holiday for everyone. Each message hit like a punch. They still didn't get it. They were still trying to make this my fault, still making me responsible for their disrespectful behavior. I didn't respond. Instead, I did something I'd been contemplating for a while. I opened my photos and scrolled back. There it was, an old family picture from years ago, right before everything really started falling apart. A perfect holiday portrait with everyone smiling brightly. Everyone except me, that is. I was there, of course, shoved into the frame like an afterthought, but I knew the truth behind those smiles. I knew what had been said before and after that photo was taken. Without hesitation, I posted it to the family chat with a caption. Here's to the perfect family, always making sure the youngest knows exactly where she stands. Then I turned off my phone completely. I let the silence envelop me, feeling like I'd finally broken free from their expectations. I had no idea what would happen next, but I didn't care. They had pushed me too far this time, and now I was done playing along. I didn't check my phone for hours. It was strangely peaceful sitting there without the constant notifications from their desperate attempts to contact me. The quiet was actually comforting, and I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. For once, I wasn't scrambling to please everyone else. I stayed up late just thinking. I could imagine exactly what they were saying behind my back, even though they lacked the courage to say it to my face. Jake especially probably thought I was overreacting, writing me off as the family drama queen again. But I wasn't. I was finished playing the role they'd assigned me, and if they couldn't understand that, they could deal with the fallout themselves. Eventually, I plugged in my phone to charge and reluctantly checked it again. The notifications were overwhelming. Dozens of missed calls, texts ranging from angry to pleading, all with an underlying current of frustration. I scrolled through them all, reading with a grim satisfaction. They were unraveling, and I wasn't going to make it easy for them to put everything back in its neat little box. My mother's text was the longest. I don't understand what's gotten into you, Zoe. You're making this about us when it's really about your attitude. You can't just abandon your family like this. You're tearing us apart. Please come back. The holiday is ruined without you. This isn't who you are. There it was, the classic guilt trip. The attempt to twist everything so that I was the villain. They always did this. Made me feel like I was causing problems just by wanting basic respect as an adult. Then, my father's message. This is immature. We need to discuss this when you've calmed down. And predictably, Jake, if you thought walking out of dinner would make some grand statement, you're wrong. You're making everything worse. You owe everyone an apology. An apology? For what? For standing up for myself for once? For demanding to be treated as an equal in a family that only valued me when it was convenient? Absolutely not. But then, there was Olivia's message. It was different from the others. It wasn't angry or demanding. It was almost understanding. Zoe, I know you're upset, and I get why, but this isn't the way to fix things. You're my sister, and I love you, but you're pushing everyone away. Please, just come back. We can talk about this. It's the holidays, for crying out loud. I stared at her words for a long time. Olivia and I had always been closer. She used to defend me when the others ganged up on me as kids. But now I wasn't sure if I could trust her anymore. Not after she'd silently allowed this treatment to continue, even when she knew it was wrong. I took a deep breath, my thumb hovering over the screen. I wanted to respond. I wanted to explain that I wasn't being dramatic or attention-seeking, that I was standing up for myself, that I was exhausted from being treated like the eternal child in our family. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I typed a brief reply. I'll think about it. I sent it and set my phone down, feeling a twinge of guilt, but I pushed it aside. I knew I couldn't return to that table without a fundamental change in how they viewed me, and I wasn't about to let them brush this under the rug like it was nothing. The next morning, I woke up to even more messages. Some were from family friends, asking where I was. They seemed genuinely concerned, but I didn't feel like explaining myself to anyone who wasn't directly part of the problem. And of course, there was another barrage of calls from my mother, but one message stood out. It was from Olivia again. Zoe, I've been talking with Jake and Mom. They're really upset, and honestly, so am I. We're family. You can't just cut yourself off like this. If you don't come home soon, things are going to get worse. Please don't make this more complicated than it needs to be. More pressure, more manipulation, and still zero understanding of my perspective. They weren't hearing me. They weren't listening. I knew exactly what they were doing, what they always did. They were trying to guilt me into coming back, trying to make me feel like I was the source of all the problems, when in reality, it was their persistent refusal to see me as anything more than the baby of the family that had created this situation. I picked up my phone, opened the group chat, and stared at the screen. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I considered what to say. I wanted to take my stand, to make them understand precisely why I was done with their treatment. But truthfully, I wasn't sure I was ready to go back yet. Not until I was certain something had changed, until I was confident they saw me for who I actually am. Then my phone buzzed again. This time, it was from my father. "Zoe, we need to talk. You can't keep running away. You're going to regret this." It hit me like a punch to the gut. The same words, the same manipulative guilt trip. I could feel the tension building inside me, like walls closing in, but I didn't respond. Not yet. The day crawled by, and with each hour, I felt the pressure of their texts, their calls, their attempts to pull me back into their orbit. But no matter how many times my phone buzzed, I maintained my distance. I had made my choice, and I wasn't going to let them bully me back into the role they'd assigned me. As evening approached, I found myself sitting alone, staring at the empty chair across from me, imagining where I would have been if I'd gone back. Part of me, an old, conditioned part, wanted to give in, to return and make peace. It was the holidays, after all, supposedly a time for family and togetherness. But I couldn't shake the feeling that if I went back now, it would be like admitting I wasn't worth fighting for, that all those years of being sidelined were acceptable, that they were right, and I was just being overly sensitive. I thought about the photo I'd shared in the group chat, the one where I was forced into a smile, positioned at the edge like an afterthought. That picture had communicated everything I needed to say. I wasn't just upset about tonight. I was upset about every year they'd treated me this way. Every birthday, every holiday, every family gathering where I was relegated to the background, never given equal footing. They thought I'd eventually cave and accept it, like I always had before, but not this time. Then my phone rang again. It was my mother. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the decline button, but something inside told me to answer. Maybe I was finally ready to hear what she had to say, or maybe I was just curious to see how far they would go to make me feel guilty. I took a deep breath and answered. "Zoe," my mother's voice came through, sounding exhausted and frustrated. "We need to talk. This has gone on long enough." I remained silent, letting her words hang in the air. She waited for me to respond, but I said nothing. "Look," she continued, "we're family. You're making this more complicated than it needs to be. I don't know what's gotten into you, but you're pushing everyone away. Your father is upset. Jake is upset. Olivia's—" She paused, clearly choosing her words. "I'm upset, Zoe." I nearly laughed out loud. They were upset? After everything they'd put me through? They had the audacity to claim they were the injured parties? I could feel my old anger rising, but I swallowed it down, not wanting to let her see how much she still affected me. "I'm not pushing anyone away, Mom," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I'm just not playing along anymore. I'm not going to sit at the kids' table, be treated like I'm invisible, and pretend everything's fine." She was quiet for a moment. I could almost hear her processing my words, trying to figure out how to redirect the conversation back into a guilt trip. "You can't just walk out on family like this. Your father worked hard to make the holiday special. Everyone is here. It's not just about you." "No, it's about how you see me," I replied. "It's about how I've spent my entire life trying to fit into the box you all created for me. But none of you ever really saw me, did you? You didn't want me as an adult, Mom. You wanted me to stay your little girl forever. And tonight was the final straw." She was silent again, and I could tell my words were finally registering. For the first time, she was actually hearing what I was saying. It wasn't just about seating arrangements. It was about how I'd been treated my entire life. "I'm sorry, Zoe," she said finally, but her voice was uncertain, hesitant. "I didn't realize you felt that way." "Yeah, well, it took me a long time to recognize it too," I replied, my voice softening slightly. "But I'm done pretending." There was a long pause, and I could feel the tension even over the phone. For the first time in forever, I felt like I was finally being heard, like I had some control over my place in this family, and it felt good. It felt empowering. "Finally," she sighed. "I understand. I really do. But I'm still your mother, and I just want us to be a family again." I let her words hang in the air for a moment. There was a time when I would have rushed back to them, desperate to smooth things over. But I wasn't that person anymore. I had learned the hard way that they would never change unless I forced them to see me as an equal. "I'll think about it," I said, repeating my earlier response. But this time it meant something different. It wasn't about giving in. It was about taking my time. It was about them realizing that I wasn't just an afterthought, that I wasn't going to let them pull me back into their toxic dynamic without real change. "All right," my mother said softly. "I hope you'll come back soon. I just want you to be happy." I ended the call and sat back, breathing deeply. It wasn't over. It wasn't a neat resolution. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had taken control of the situation. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me anymore. And maybe, just maybe, they would finally see me for who I really am. I set my phone down and stared out the window, watching snowflakes drift through the darkness. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally free. And as for the holiday, it wasn't ruined, because for the first time in my life, I was putting myself first. Everything else could wait. As I sat there watching the gentle snowfall, I couldn't help but wonder, did I do the right thing? Or did I just walk away from something that could have been fixed?